Okay. Okay, so now we're going to shift gears shortly to talk about GitHub. And so I'll do a little bit of just talking for a few minutes, and then we'll get back onto your computers and do the same thing that I do. But okay, so Git and GitHub are version control systems, or Git is a version control system, and GitHub is kind of a collaborative interface around version control. And I didn't know what that meant when I first heard about version control, but it's a way to save time with a lot of the sort of bookkeeping that you've been doing your whole life. So every time you've saved a file with an underscore of a date and your initials, like whether it's a Word document, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet, like every time you've done that, you've been doing your own version control, so that if you wanted to go back in time, like last week, and see what your draft document looked like before you met with your advisor, for example, like you've been doing your own version control. And what Git and GitHub are so powerful about is that they will keep track of your file's versions for you, so that you can just have one copy of it and work without a lot of that bookkeeping. So I know, it's hugely powerful. And what's cool about it is, it's built for software developers, but we as scientists can use it, and it's built to have these really intricate, collaborative, detail-oriented bookkeeping systems, and we can use that. So I kind of think of GitHub. So Git and GitHub are two separate things, but I tend to think of them, for my own purposes, I think of them as one thing, because most of the time I think about GitHub itself. So we'll get into that itself. So it's not as important to me, in my opinion, that at this moment you distinguish between the two things. I'm just going to be calling them GitHub. So what helped me is to think of GitHub kind of like Dropbox. It's this place in the cloud where you can share information, and you'll actually have a local folder on your local computer, that anything within that folder is tracked by one of these systems. But GitHub has a lot more they have a lot more, there's a lot more gatekeeping almost in GitHub than there is in Dropbox. So it doesn't sync automatically. You have to be really deliberate and explicit about when you want it to sync and what you want that kind of snapshot in time to represent. So we'll get to that more as we go get our hands on our computers. But it's a pretty powerful system. So what we're going to do, there's a lot of different ways that you can interact with GitHub on your computer. But one of the powerful things about RStudio is that you can actually sync to your online GitHub place from RStudio directly, so you don't need to have any other software that you interact with when you're working in R and collaborating and versioning with GitHub. So this is a preview of what we're going to do, and I think a lot of the words won't make sense to you, so we'll walk through them. But we're going to work both in the cloud, online, and on our local computers throughout this session. There's a lot of great materials to look at more. Okay, so getting sort of more in the reasons why we use this is, like I said, this sort of gets away. We're going to move away from having all these different versions of an R script and all these kind of final things that I'm sure we've all experienced. So in this example, all of these, this would collapse into an rscript.r, probably with a better name than rscript. And there would just be a single file in this folder that then Git was tracking through time instead of us tracking it through time and having all this duplication. It's also having just one single file instead of all these files will not only save you time in keeping track of all these things, but it also improves collaborative efforts. So instead of you emailing a version of something to a collaborator, to your advisor, and then, an hour later being like, oh wait, use this version, like it moves away from that, because the most recent thing is always in one place. And then it also makes it really a lot easier once it's online. It makes it easier to distribute to other people. So maybe you meant this originally for, just me, but now you want our whole team to have access to something. Well, it's there for everybody. Okay, so getting into the details a little bit more. So Git is a version control system that we're going to install on your computer, and it's going to work sort of behind the scenes to track your files. Kind of the way Dropbox is sort of working behind the scenes to track your files. And then GitHub is a separate company, and it's, for our purposes, it's a website where you're archiving your work in the cloud and accessing it remotely. It's also really powerful because it helps you visualize differences between the versions, which is something that you saving all these underscore finals doesn't do. Like, to visualize the differences line by line of what's changed in a file is super powerful. Can also do differences between images, which is pretty powerful as well. So we're gonna, you guys have your GitHub accounts already, and we'll set them up on your computer, but it's something that you can do if you haven't already done it. I can't remember if we've talked about this before, but a free account on GitHub means everything you do is public, and then you have to pay if you want privacy. But if you are a student with a .edu address, you can click on this link and register as a student, and they'll give you 5 private repositories for free. So if you're working on your thesis, or you've got stuff that you're not comfortable sharing publicly, you're able to have that free space that's private as a student. So yeah, GitHub was developed for social coding, so really like collaborative coding, and it's really changed the game and how, like, what a collaborator could be defined as. And there's a lot of functionality to GitHub and to Git that is super powerful and are being used by the data teams at Google and Facebook and Airbnb and really big coding companies. And like, we as scientists don't need to know all of those things up front. And like, I'd say I use probably less than 10% of GitHub's features, but I am really, it still makes my science really effective. So just know that going in, that there's going to be things that seem out of your league, and that's fine. You can still use this tool for our purposes. But you'll see words like branches and pull requests, and don't let that be a barrier to you using this tool. And then, yeah. Okay, so there's some GitHub terminology that we're gonna talk about here, and I've defined them up here, but I'm gonna sort of talk them through in this image. So when we're at github.com, there's the idea that there's this remote this remote copy of your information, which is on github.com. And then when you want to bring it to your local computer, you do this one-time clone to your computer. So it's not a download, because it's called clone because it's including the version files, the versioning with you. So it's not just like a discrete download. And then once it's on your local computer, you're working locally as you would doing anything else. It's just like how, even if Dropbox is watching some of your files, you're still working as you would, but it's just being tracked. And then when you want to sync it back to GitHub, you do this kind of multi-stepped process. So it's not an automatic sync, but you'll be pulling remote changes, committing to your work locally, and then pushing your local changes. So this is kind of the muscle memory that will get you guys really comfortable with, because I do this pulling and pushing to GitHub probably 100 times a day, and you guys, depending on what you're working on, might do something like that as well. So we'll get you guys really comfortable with that. Okay, so that's kind of, I know it's really abstract right now, so let's get this set up on your computer and get you guys walking through all this stuff too. So, okay, so you guys have a GitHub account that you've created, and now we're going to configure Git on our local computers. So when you're in RStudio, there's a couple different ways that you can get to well, let's see, okay. If you're in the most recent version of RStudio, you'll have a terminal window right next to the console. You can also open terminal as a separate program. If you're on a Mac, you can go to your applications folder. I'm not sure where it will be. You can also use the command spacebar and type in terminal on a Mac, and on Windows, it will be your command line. Okay, so go there and type. You can either type this or copy and paste it if you've got if you've got this book open. But go ahead in your console and write git space -- version. So I'm going to put this in my terminal, which is not registering for a minute. What's going on here? I might restart my session.
R won't let me type in it. Oh, the terminals having RStudio is not letting me type.
Okay.
But maybe I should restart it. See?
Yeah, I'm having the same issue. Let's see. I might quit RStudio and then start again.
There we go.
Okay, yeah. So if you want to use this terminal, maybe I needed to restart my to quit RStudio and then open it again in order to get my my terminal open. So what I did was I typed which git. Is that what I said to type? No, sorry, that's not what I said. Never mind. How about, so type in git space -- version and hit return.
1.9.1.
1.9.1. Okay. How about you guys? Same. Okay. Okay. Let's keep going because since you guys are working on the server, I don't think you can update Git. I'd have to ask other people. So let's see if this works, and if it doesn't, we'll get other people involved from NCs. Okay. Let's keep going. Now type git config, and spaces matter here. So git space config space -- global, and then type user.name, and then write your username. So for me, I'm going to copy this into my console, and I'm going to replace this with Jules32.
Your username from
your GitHub username.
I shouldn't be doing this, right? Because I'm in more now. This is not my laptop.
Yes, you don't do this right now because it's already set up for me.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you saw Nick did send. Yeah, so we can set that up. There's a couple steps you need to take, but we can set that up afterwards, and then we'll do this for you.
Okay.
Yeah, but you can ignore this part, but then you'll follow along with everything else.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So when you guys hit return, it should return. Let's see. I think mine is already registered, so I'm gonna ignore this. I think I won't return. I won't enter this stuff myself anymore, but you guys should get no response back when you do this, and that's good. If at this point, if you're, yep, that's perfect. If you don't get an error or some kind of message, then that means everything's great. Okay, so now let's do the next step. Now we're gonna say git space config space -- global user email, and then you're going to replace this user email with the email address that you signed up for your GitHub account with. So that would be your Bren ID. Okay, and if you don't, again, if you don't get an error, that's great. So, okay. I think you've got to put in your full Bren, because I think ISU is your GitHub username, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay. And then this last step is just to confirm that everything was set up properly. So, oops. So as the last thing to put in, I'm just gonna delete everything here. Oh, okay.
So the container of does not contain section -- global.
Oh, it's giving me that error. Okay. Maybe. Okay, so it gave you that error twice now. Okay, so try it. Press the up key and try it. Go over on the sides with the arrow keys to. Why don't try deleting the -- global. And then hit return. Do a search. Lock. It's fascinating. Okay. Will you try doing the last command anyway, just to see if, try doing this git space config -- list up on the screen. Which one? On the, that's on the screen, last one. I'm just curious. Because everybody else didn't have a problem with this global.
Was that your email, or did you use your other UCs? Because there's like the two red ones.
Go to your profile. Do not go up to
I think it's extra.
setting. Oh yeah. So that is it. Did you have any problems? No.
Did you use your Bren email?
Here's the one associated.
Yeah, I used Bren's. Okay, why don't you go back to our studio? Let's see. So, okay, so it worked. Which is, no, wait, hang on. Sorry. Let me, can I have, I'm gonna just take a look here for a second. No, it's okay. The config list. So that stuff is not registered. Get config global user. Okay, let's try. Let's try some quotes.
What's the username?
Sorry?
What's the username?
Yeah, the username worked, but then they get emails.
Yeah, but it's also strange because this git config list, like this should display, oh, it does display your username. Okay, so that's good at least. User email is not, I'm just gonna type it again. Okay, so maybe there's just something weird when you pasted it.
Yeah.
So now it works. So this is a one-time thing that we're setting this up, so and it's always a little bit finicky, so I think it should be fine now. Okay.
And then you write the your username and then your email, just because both of them would relate directly to your account.
Yeah, so you're setting, it's a little confusing because right now our local computers are also in the cloud because you guys are working on our server, so it's a little confusing. But what you're doing is you're telling your R Studio that this is your GitHub account. So this is just this like one-time registering.
If you want to do it like from my computer,
Yes.
do the same.
You'll do the same thing from your computer. Yeah.
And then I think I can say directly my code.
Yeah. Yeah. So this will be a cool way for you to collaborate with your own computer. So this is like, if you don't bring your laptop one day, you can still do all this stuff, and then when you go home, you'll sync it there. Yeah, that's the way I work. Is my work computer and my laptop, I sync through GitHub as though I'm two different people in a way, but I'm the same person. Yeah. So you'll do this also on your laptops if you want to do it from home, and that will be like one of the things maybe I have you try this weekend, or this weekend, but for next time, is try to set it up. And if you get errors,
it's the same process. I go to a terminal. And
yes. Yeah. And now you know if you get this weird error, try typing it again. You know, This is because we're working in this is the only time we're going to work in the command line, and that's like a whole world of computer science that we're not going to get into. So it's just this one thing.
To interrupt super fast, yeah, Hadley retweeted our tweet about you.
Well, that's exciting. Yeah.
Don't worry, we're gonna cut that out.
Yeah. And I'm like, let me pause to give some context.